Yo, what's up, everybody? It is Tuesday, June 3rd. Market was up. This morning, we were lower, and I sent out an email to my subscribers saying, you got to buy the dip. I said it yesterday that these flows, let me just switch this. These flows are really, really strong, man. I said that yesterday in my video. So, it's like a tsunami. You can't go against this, man. So all these dips, you got to buy them until something changes because, wow, they're powerful. Let me give you some numbers, which I'm pretty sure you're going to see that in the media over the next, week or so. But I'm going to give you these numbers before anybody else, as I normally do. So the month of May ended up with like a 745 billion net leading flow spending. Huge, huge. And the net flow, which everybody calls the deficit, the government deficit. I don't use that terminology. I told you. I stopped using that a long time ago because it's just misleading, and I say net government transfers. But I'll just say, because it's going to be reported as the deficit for May was like 310 billion. So they're going to go crazy over that. They're going to flip out. All right? Like, oh my God. But let me just give you some context here, and you're only going to get this from me. You're not going to get this from anyone else. The reason why we had like a 745 billion leading flow and a 310 billion deficit was because the first of the month payments, which usually should go out on the first of the month, which would be June 1st, they went out on May 30th, Friday, because June 1st was a Sunday. So all that leading flow ended up in the May data. Okay, so it made May look very, very, very big. I mean, it was big even without that. It was like I said yesterday, it was 109 billion. So instead of 745 billion, we would have had like 636, right, billion. Very decent. But when it's going to be hitting the news, you know what they're going to say? Oh my God, government spending blowing through the roof, blah, blah, blah. The deficit's 310 billion. Oh my God. Maybe you're even going to have Elon Musk saying, you see, we didn't cut enough with the Doge and this spending bill. He's already out there trashing the spending bill. All right, which I think he might have some impact in the Senate, because I think a lot of these politicians, they're afraid of Elon Musk because of his financial power. Like he could run primaries against people, like he could back candidates who are more aligned with his views when it comes to government spending. But we'll see anyway. But I just wanted to tell you guys, because it's going to show up. It's going to show up in the media, right? And I want you to be smart. I want you to be smarter. When you're going to have your friends or your colleagues or whatever, your relatives saying, oh, the 300 billion deficit in May, you're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. That's just a calendar issue. Not that they're going to even understand that, right? I can imagine you trying to explain that stuff to them. It's going to go right over their heads, but you guys know because you've been with me for a long time. So, let's talk a little bit about this tax and spending bill that's in the Senate right now, going through reconciliation. So Rand Paul, you have to understand, this guy's he's like one of these hard money Austrian, gold buggy kind of people. I think he's buddy with Peter Schiff. And so you know where he's coming from. So he's really, really against the increase in the debt ceiling. Supposedly in this bill, they're looking at a 5 trillion increase in the debt ceiling, which would be great because that'll take away all this instability that I've been pointing out to you as a result of these big reserve dumps into the system. But he's against it because, like he said, and this is what they all say, now we're going to have to go out and borrow $5 trillion. So here's a question I would ask people who constantly characterize it like that, like the government's borrowing trillions. What exactly is the government borrowing? I would ask them two questions to start off the conversation. Okay, what exactly is the government borrowing? And who are they borrowing it from? Okay, so the answer to the first question is obviously the government's borrowing dollars. And if they answer that correctly, if they say, well, they're borrowing money, what currency, dollars, then there's obviously a problem there because, like, okay, where do those dollars come from? They got to come from someplace. Do they just kind of like organically appear, in the global economy out of nothing? They have to come from somewhere. And we know the only place they can come from is the government. The government has a monopoly on the issuance of US dollars. All right. And who are we borrowing it from? Okay, well, we borrow it from China. Obviously, they're going to say China. They're going to say, I don't know what, the banks. I don't know. They're obviously going to say China, right? Where does China get the dollars from? I mean, these are two very basic questions that if you ask somebody who is making that statement that we're borrowing all this money, they got to try to answer those two questions. And like, I'm not saying it's going to make a light bulb go off in their heads. It should if they have any kind of intelligence. If they think about it for 2 seconds, it should make a light bulb go off in their heads. These are not hard questions, all right? What are we borrowing? Dollars. Where do the dollars come from? And who are we borrowing it from? China. Where does China get the dollars? They sell us stuff. They get dollars. The dollars come from, it all emanates from the same place. It can only come from the same place, which is the government. You can't borrow. Number one, you don't borrow something that you can create without limit. All right? And number two, there's just, it's not borrowing. The dollars have to be put out there first before the Chinese can lend it to. The dollars have to be put into the system, the global economy, in by some way, transactionally, they have to be put into the global economy for China to have any dollars to give back to us. So these are two very basic questions. And, I think, here's how I think, and, I've tried to ask these questions. And basically the conversation just kind of devolves into, no, man, we're just in so much debt. I mean, they're just like, not even the slightest attempt. You know how you could tell if you're an intelligent person, like you become curious and you think, you run it through your head and it's like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, that doesn't make sense that we borrow. Like an intelligent person, if they ran that through their heads, if they just hold on for a second before jumping to an answer, or even as they attempt to answer that, they start to see kind of the inconsistencies in their arguments, and then they, let me think about that for a second. I think that's what a lot of you people ended up happening to you when you started watching my channel and stuff like that. I know a lot of you came here, you weren't MMT people, but then you started to learn and understand and you changed your view. I know that happened to me. Same thing happened to me. I had all this, I've said on here, I wish I still had these tapes. Back in the mid-90s, I used to be a regular guest on CNBC on Squawk Box when they first started that show. I think it was like 95 or 96. I was one of the very first regular guest hosts that they used to ask me to come on. And that was way before anybody knew about people like Peter Schiff and stuff like that. I was on there. And I was saying all this same stuff. We're broke, we're borrowing from China, the dollar's going to collapse, all this crap. Until I met Warren Mosler, and then like a light bulb did go off in my head when I started thinking about this stuff. And then I was like, man, I got this all wrong. I got this all wrong. So that's a very, those two questions, and believe me, I'm going to save you some time right now, because you're not going to, I think it would be a rarity if you actually found somebody where posing those questions to them would get them to stop in their tracks and just think about it. I'm not even saying that they would, it would flip a switch at that moment, but just to get them to think about it. I don't even think you're going to find somebody who's going to stop to even think about it. They're just going to brush you off like, hey man, we got a lot of debt. They're going to go like 36 trillion, bro. We got a lot of debt. They're not even going to, because it's like, that's like cognitive dissonance. If they hear something that goes so flagrantly against their beliefs, that's going to create some kind of internal stress, their brain stress. That just is. But that's the question you got to ask. Like, what are we borrowing? Dollars. They got to come back with that answer. If they don't come back with that answer, you ask them another question. Well, we're borrowing money. Well, what kind of money? What currency? We're borrowing what? 36. We got 36 trillion in debt. 36 trillion what? Dollars? Yeah, dollars. So we're borrowing dollars, you're saying. You lead them in that direction. Where did the dollars come from? Did the Chinese? Did they print them up in there? Who are we borrowing it from? Well, the Chinese for sure. There are bankers. I had this conversation with senators. I had this conversation with big time economists when I was working at Fox. And even with them, and I posed those questions, they would be like, they would brush it off and just like, well, we got a lot of debt and we got to deal with it. Like, they just don't want to engage or think about it logically. They just don't. They just want to go to that, we got a lot of debt and we got to deal with it. They brush it off, man. But I'm not saying that this is unique to understanding, economics or finance. I think with a lot of things, with a lot of issues, people have ingrained beliefs, very, very deep ingrained beliefs, and they're gonna protect those beliefs, because it's very hard for people. Like I said, it creates cognitive dissonance, it creates stress, it creates discomfort in the individual. If something is shown to go against their views, against their beliefs, they dismiss it, they ignore it, they try to denigrate it, they try to knock it down, they try to make it like it's not true. This is human nature. Like, you don't want to be corrected, And if something seems valid to you, and if you hold on to something as a belief that's very, very powerful for you, and it gives you like a faith in something, even though it could be a kind of a negative faith, a bad faith. I don't even think that faith is the right word, but like, you don't want that to go away. You're going to defend that. This is what's going on here now. You got a guy like Rand Paul, man. The guy's a fucking physician. All right? He's not like a dummy. He's a very educated, although he never went to I didn't know you didn't have to go to undergraduate school to go to medical school. I thought you had, but I don't think he ever went to university. He went to medical school. Whatever, man. But I'm just telling you that I just sit back and I watch all this stuff and I'm like, wow, man. And then you get a guy like Jamie Dimon, which I did a video on this the other day, how Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, he shot him down. He shot down Jamie Dimon on an interview on CBS. I think it was 60 Minutes when this interviewer asked Besson, what about Jamie Dimon? He's saying there's going to be a bond market crack. And Besson was like, you know what? This guy's been predicting that stuff his whole freaking career, and nothing ever came true. I mean, I was impressed. I like Besson now, man. That took some chutzpah. That took some balls, man. Because these guys, like I said, they don't usually attack each other. They're all in the same echelon. They all go to the same country clubs and stuff like that, right? So, I mean, it's a rare sight when you see, one going after the other. You usually don't see that. They're all buddy-buddy, and they're all in the same club. Like George Carlin said, they're all in that club. We're not in that club. They're all in that club. But to see the, one club member going after the other club member, you don't see that. That's about as rare as seeing a UFO. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Please like and subscribe. And don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Sign up for a 30-day free trial to MMT Trader. The flows are too strong. Nothing's coming down. We got to see what happens with this. A couple of things. Let me just add this. I want to see what happens with the big, beautiful bill, how that ends up. And let's see what happens with these tariffs after the 90 days. If it really starts to be some very, very strong fiscal drag, that could change the outlook. But right now, even it is strong right now. I've been telling you, like 25 billion a month. It's not enough. It's just the leading flows are way too powerful. Anyway, that's it. See you tomorrow. Bye.